And we are, as a people, inherently and historically
Wake up.
opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Welcome to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. These are Conspiracy Queries, and I am Alan Park. Hey, remember that fear you had when you were a little kid? The first time your mommy had to take you to the hospital? Part of that fear was that it was a big, scary place with sick people, but what if some of that fear was actually an inherent knowing on your part that you couldn't even identify? That beyond a place where they surgically reattach limbs and do x-rays and put a cast on your broken leg, you were afraid to be there because a hospital can be a place that gets you sick. Many people with weakened or compromised immune systems, for one reason or another, have to go to the hospital. And while they're there dealing with whatever's wrong with them, their weakened immune system can fall prey to a superbug. Superbug. That sounds like a pretty cool name, but once again, it's just a euphemism for something horrendous, given a cute name so we don't have to worry about it too much. There are plenty examples of that. Friendly fire, collateral damage. They sound kind of nice, but they both mean death. But I'm not going down that road right now. But before superbugs, microbial bacteria had a certain strength and were definitely something you wanted to avoid. And you could do that in most cases with sufficient hygiene and nutrition, but then chemical drugs were introduced to fight these building blocks of disease. And that was the plan, chemical drugs. And what's happened is, like when you go to the gym and have to use weights and move them around, you actually get stronger by building that resistance. And now some of these drugs have helped to create diseases such as MRSA. Lord have MRSA. MRSA, which seems to be able to resist everything now and threatens the very world we live on. Well, based on that, you can imagine what superweeds are. They sound pretty cool, but again, a horrendous name was really the thing underneath that. A cute name, superweed, when it's really a horrendous plant that's going to choke out all kinds of life and growth of crops. It's the same plan over and over again. We have to fight the other side and beat the other side and win. And so many times, the other side actually gets stronger. And I do believe a lot of these people have their heart in the right place, that they're trying to get rid of the problem. But it's just seeing this repeating pattern over and over in the course of a lifetime makes me wonder, are we really that stupid? The same methodology raises its stupid fat head in war and now in cyber wars. And while so many of us sit back and laugh or cry, or sometimes both, about another military-industrial complex pack of lies being sold to us like having a war on Iraq, and now the same pack of lies is being used to get us into a war with Iran, I say that on the one hand, go for it. You know, it worked the first time. I get why they're using the same song and dance, because it worked the first time. I can only hope that fewer people are fooled by those lies this time, and that we can somehow prevent our governments from launching World War III. I don't even believe personally that Iran is a threat, not a nuclear bomb threat, but maybe more of a, hey, we've got our own sustenance here and we don't need your oil and we're an economic powerhouse that you can't deal with kind of threat. But they've been looked at the same way microbes in hospitals have been, and pesky weeds. And you got to enjoy this because it is kind of funny. There was great concern, well acted and believed by many, that Iran was a great threat. So the geniuses somewhere, and I say that term fully tongue-in-cheek, geniuses deep within the Israeli-U.S. military-industrial shopping mall have taken the same approach to solving the Iran problem that hasn't worked with disease or weeds, and they created a virus called the Stuxnet computer virus. And it was reported in 2009 or 10, I believe it was, that they let this virus loose into Iran's nuclear facilities, one in particular, thereby nullifying Iran as a nuclear threat. And they didn't exactly confirm or deny that they were involved in this back in 2009 or 10. But as it turns out, that is exactly what happened. And so by using the Stuxnet virus, thereby hopefully shutting down Iran's nuclear facilities under George Bush, guess what? It didn't work. And that is what is going on with the cyber world, with Iran. Or is it Iran or Iran? I don't know. You say it however you want. Just don't invade it. It's not going to work. It turns out the Stuxnet virus attacked Iran even earlier than initially reported, that it was launched in 2007. So more lies coming from the supposed good guys about what was going on. But what I love about this is that it has, in fact, turned Iran into the superweed that's even more of a problem than it was in the first place. Because Stuxnet being involved in their computer systems and being a worm and causing problems, it's reported in the Telegraph in England that the Stuxnet worm actually increased Iran's nuclear potential. The report was published in the Royal United Services Institute, claims that the Stuxnet worm exposed vulnerabilities in Iranian enrichment facilities that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, and that the production actually went up in the year that it was discovered. So another same old problem trying to be solved, and it's not working again. So pretty stupid mistake, a predictable stupid mistake. And so since that didn't work, now Bibi from Israel is complaining that Iran has taken to attacking Israel with their computers. And you can imagine that Bibi Netanyahu and his peeps are pretty upset about this. They say that Iran's cyber attacks are incessant and that Israel has accused, they are accusing Iran of carrying out incessant cyber attacks on their systems at a cyber warfare conference in Tel Aviv. I couldn't get my tickets for that. They said that the attacks were a threat to Israel's critical national infrastructure and their systems for water, power, trains, and banking. All because, hey, you know what? You did it first. You did it first, Israel. You decided to try to get in Iran's way of having their own nuclear and power production facilities, and now you're upset about it. You're upset that they're doing the same thing that you did. And now Bibi has said, and this is in the Jerusalem Post, that the way they're going to fix this problem is that he wants to put a digital iron dome over to stop the attacks. An iron dome. So they're looking for an iron dome to prevent Syrian attacks, and now a digital iron dome. I guess you just mount that on top of the giant wall that's there and just close the whole place right off. I don't know if that's his plan. But with the marked increase of cyber attacks on Israel over the last few months, Netanyahu said at the annual cyber conference that they need to get a digital iron dome. Wow. Well, good luck with that plan. That doesn't seem to be going so well. And on that note, I wonder if we can have a little segment of Meet the New Owners, because as you might have heard on this show, China has pretty much taken over oil production in Canada, and they're a bit of a problem, I think. But there's nothing you can do about it. They've weaseled their way into Canada's oil production, tar sands production out in Alberta, and that's courtesy of Stephen Harper, who says it'll never happen again. I love that. It's on the Shut the Barn Doors After the Horses Came Out school of talk. Chinese cyber spies have hacked most Washington institutions, experts say. This is from the Washington Post. It says, start asking security experts which powerful Washington institutions have been penetrated by Chinese cyber spies, and this is the usual answer, almost all of them. The list of those hacked in recent years includes law firms, think tanks, news organizations, human rights groups, contractors, congressional offices, embassies, and federal agencies. The information compromised by such intrusions would be enough to map out how power is exercised in Washington to a remarkably nuanced degree. So while we're hearing all about this Edward Snowden character who's leaked all kinds of information about how the NSA works, it turns out China beat them to the punch, and they figured out Washington inside out and upside down anyway. We'll talk more about that later on with my guests. I have two guests today. David Colapinto from the NWC or the NWO. No, he's from the NWC. And Jon Rappoport will also be on later. But let's just give you a couple of more pieces of what's going on in China, because it's time to meet the new owners, or know the new owners of Canada. From The Hindu publication in India, it says, China's sex workers experience routine abuse. And who's that abuse coming from? The police. Yes, after Xiao Zhu lost her job working in a factory in China, among the thousands who were laid off, she decided to go to the Chinese capital in search of work, and like many young rural migrant women, ended up in Beijing struggling with a high school education turned to prostitution. And it turns out the cops are laying a beating on some of the Chinese prostitutes. So I don't know if that's happening here, but it sure is a problem for prostitutes in China being beaten by the cops. So these are the new owners of Canada's oil system. We have time for just one more piece of Chinese news to help you get to know the owners. Chinese tourists have been warned over bad behavior overseas. This is from The Guardian. Gotta love that publication. While tour operators and department stores from New York to Paris court Chinese visitors to boost their coffers, one of the country's top leaders has warned that ill-behaved tourists are damaging the national image. Wang Yang, one of China's 4 deputy prime ministers, redundant much, said that while other countries have welcomed Chinese tourism, the quality of some of the travelers is not high. He said, I suppose in a Chinese accent, they speak loudly in public, carve characters on tourist attractions, cross the road when traffic lights are still red, spit anywhere, and carry out some other uncivilized behavior. It damages the image of the Chinese people and has a very bad impact. These are the new owners. All right, let's move on to our interview with David Colapinto. Right now we have with us on the phone a gentleman representative from NWC, not NWO, as is often talked about on shows like this that involve whistleblowers, but the NWC, the National Whistleblowers Center in Washington, D.C. Since 1988, whistleblowers supported by the NWC and attorneys representing these whistleblowers have achieved victories for environmental protection, government contract fraud, nuclear safety, and government and corporate accountability, such as exposing misconduct at the World Trade Center and the 9/11 crime scenes, including theft, can you believe it, by FBI agents and the mishandling of evidence. They've also documented deficiencies in the FBI's counter-terrorism program and forcing the FBI to accredit its crime lab, and a list of other things that they have accomplished, as well as protecting people known as whistleblowers. So with me on the phone right now is the representative from the NWC, David Colapinto. David, how are you?
Fine. How are you today?
Good, thanks. What is your position with the NWC?
I'm legal director and general counsel.
Okay. So does that mean you are Ed Snowden's lawyer right now?
No, we don't represent Mr. Snowden. We're a group that is interested in promoting whistleblower rights, educating the public, educating Congress about the need for whistleblower protection.
Okay, so at this point in time, with the Promise software, rather not Promise software, sorry, the Prism program that was just highlighted by Ed Snowden, who has now flown the coop. Are you in your organization doing any kind of preparation work in order to be able to assist Ed Snowden? Does he even qualify for your help?
Well, Mr. Snowden is a whistleblower. He is someone who has come out from the shadows of the intelligence agencies, the intelligence community, and has disclosed serious wrongdoing on the part of NSA and intelligence agencies, not just in the overcollection of data, which is of questionable legality, probably illegal under the Constitution of the United States, but also his revelations demonstrate that the NSA and the head of the intelligence community in the United States has misled Congress and actually lied to Congress in response to questions about what the NSA is doing.
What was the gentleman's name that was just involved, I believe, with the NSA, who under oath stated that the NSA doesn't do specific mining as was asked of him?
There was a appearance. You may be referring to the appearance by General Clapper, who is the National Intelligence Director, who oversees all of the intelligence agencies in the United States. He's the super chief of intelligence.
Right, that is who I'm referring to. So he was under oath recently.
Right. In March of 2013, he was asked specifically whether or not the NSA collects any data at all on millions of Americans. And his answer was no, sir. And then Senator Wyden, a little bit incredulous at the answer, asked him, was he sure? And the transcript, and you can your listeners can go to the website of Senator Wyden and pull up that hearing, the clip, and he said, not wittingly. Maybe, perhaps, wittingly, we collect a few pieces of information on Americans in our other investigations, and that was his answer. He was asked to clarify that answer after the hearing, and he refused to do so. And then over the weekend, he was pressed on the question on NBC and was asked if he wanted to clarify his answer, and he came up with some explanation about how he thought it was, an unfair, do you beat your wife kind of question.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So he hasn't come up with an explanation as to why he lied, and what's interesting about it is the disclosures by Mr. Snowden demonstrate that, of course, that they are collecting. They're probably collecting at that very time billions of pieces of data on U.S. citizens, and they knew that.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but isn't that perjury?
Yeah, that it is, and it's just blatant falsehoods, which is why this whole thing stinks to high heaven, and these guys are attacking the whistleblower to cover up their own misconduct.
Now, why do you think Ed Snowden has left the country, A, and B, why would he choose Hong Kong, which I believe has some kind of extradition agreement with the United States? Yeah,
I have no idea why he chose Hong Kong. It's pretty clear, and all we know really is what he said in his interviews with The Guardian and The Washington Post, as those papers have reported them. And it is the first thing that we looked at over the weekend when The Guardian published the transcript of the interview with him. The question was, what are these leaked documents going to show? And his answer was, it's going to show that the NSA routinely lies to Congress to hide what they're really doing, which to me was a very, very important answer to the question. It is not something that someone says if they just want the limelight, which is the attack that has been launched against Mr. Snowden by the White House and their allies in the media, that he's just narcissistic, he's doing this for self-aggrandizement, etc., and all the other insults that have been hurled at him, when in fact what he's done is he's left the country because there are no places that he can go to safely blow the whistle in the United States, given the fact that he worked in the intelligence community.
Right. Now, in that Guardian interview, a fascinating thing that was revealed there that I haven't heard too much of, they haven't highlighted it too much in the press, is the idea of they log on to everything, and that there very much exists the possibility that they can then, from those pieces that they've logged on to, whoever their target of choice is, that they can construct any story they want with pictures and sound bites and chats from your life and basically edit together a damning persona. Is that a legitimate, I mean, he's bringing that up that they might do that. Is that really a legitimate concern for an American to have? That they're
Yes, it's for anybody, not just Americans, but anybody whose data is being collected by NSA, but it is of particular relevance in the United States because the NSA is not supposed to be engaged in domestic spying. So that's a huge problem from them there. But even the collection of data in the hands of the NSA by international phone calls or emails, the collection of so much private data raises a lot of concerns about abuse. And that goes to the heart of the whole issue. We live in the electronic age where so much information about people's lives is stored on computers, is sent over the Internet, and phone calls are all digitized today where that didn't exist in the past. So when you're looking at the collection of electronic data on someone, yes, it can be manipulated, it can be abused, or it can be searched.
Well, that is the heart of the matter. So I just want to ask you, and we have to get going soon. And I'm thanking you for your time. It's been I'm sure you guys are quite busy down there at this point. What examples do we have so far that an overcollection of this kind of data and a putting together of this information is something that someone has already had to deal with? I mean, because we're led to believe that, gathering all this data and putting it together can be too much of an imposition, might lead to too much of a surveillance state. But do we have stark examples where, in fact, that kind of package has been put together to cause someone harm?
Well, we do know that there is the recent example of the AP records, the Associated Press records, the collection of all of their phone calls, because there is a supposed leak investigation going on. When you think about that, is the government, because they have these tools and this capacity to track phone calls, just decided, we're just going to, this is easy, because we have this capacity, we're just going to take all of the media's phone calls and see who they've been calling and who's been calling them. That's a recent example.
All right. And do you have anything of a personal nature where someone has been buried with this kind of a false construct?
Well, the fact that these activities are conducted in secrecy with no oversight, and anyone who comes forward to disclose them will be prosecuted. It's very hard for us to get examples of that. But there have been other whistleblowers from NSA who came forward in years past, since 9/11, to disclose improprieties going on where people who work for the NSA listen to salacious phone calls. They get a charge out of it. That's not what they're supposed to be doing.
No, it isn't. Well, all right. Well, thank you, David Colapinto, for your time, representative of the National Whistleblowers Center. And let's hope that things work out well for Mr. Snowden and that you folks can help him back into a safe and unharmed existence.
Well, thank you very much.
From a mainstream legal counsel perspective, we now dive deeper down into the surveillance hole with our guest, and well studied on all topics concerning this particular leak of information, Jon Rappoport has over 30 years' experience writing on politics, health, media, culture, and art for both mainstream and non-mainstream publications around the world as a freelance investigative reporter. Jon's hosted and produced and written radio programs in L.A. and Vegas, although the ones that happened there stayed there, and appeared on countless mainstream television programs, but now he operates largely away from the mainstream because, as he puts it, my research was not friendly to the conventional media. And so now he's encompassing areas such as deep politics, conspiracies, alternative health, and the medical cartel, the potential of the human imagination, and we're going to have to do a whole show on that with Jon sometime. Mind control, symbology, and solutions to the takeover of the planet by the hidden elites. Jon, welcome to Conspiracy Queries, and have I got some queries for you? How are you today?
Okay, very good. Good to be here.
Good. Well, thanks for coming on. Folks, if you haven't heard of the NSA information leaker Ed Snowden, then you're probably not listening to this show. Ed Snowden has been called by many a whistleblower, and after making disclosures about the Prism Program, data gathering system and mining, state spying program that most Americans would seem to be leery of. They wouldn't really want to be living in East German Stasi kind of country, yet others are quite angry with Snowden for releasing this info. Let me just say that if Snowden had released that information to just me and he only told me about it, I would have said, yeah, I figured as much. So much evidence points to the fact that this has been going on for decades. So why the shock among the politicians and the horrified reactions in the Twitterverse? Is Snowden really a whistleblower? And as his many critics claim that he is not, why is he hiding and facing a lifetime behind bars or worse after not really releasing new information as they claim? Jon, can you weigh in on that?
Sure. There is a huge disconnect between what people who have been alert for the last 10 or 15 years already know and what a lot of the public knows. That's number one. So in other words, yeah, we know this has been going on forever. It's just a question of, the tech, how far they've been able to take it. People who are awake already have assumed that the Internet is under the same kind of surveillance that phone calls have been forever, so it's no big deal, really. On the other hand, the politicians have to make noise all the time. They have to stand up and, do their hideous thing. I'm shocked, outraged, I can't believe this, that it's happening. Meanwhile, they've been on briefings, secret briefings, so they know what's going on. They know that the Internet has been under surveillance since the beginning. And common sense tells you the same thing. I mean, there have been all these programs like Echelon and Gwen, NSA programs to spy on phone calls for a long time.
And then there was DARPA.
So do you really think that when the Internet came along, with a burst in the 1990s, that the surveillance state was just going to sit back and say, oh, man, this is a whole new thing, and we just don't know what to do, so I guess we'll have to just stick to phone calls and let these people do whatever they do online.
Yeah, well, this stuff was in the news. I mean, they had DARPA. That was the total, DARPA had the Total Information Awareness Project. I mean, how much more stark of a title do you need than Total Information Awareness?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously. But the specifics, yes, they're interesting. They indict the biggest tech companies in the world for providing open access through their servers or through cut-ins to various parts of their systems by NSA, so that NSA can just suck up all the data transmission that's coming through. And that definitely does bring these tech companies into the surveillance state as willing participants. But we've already known that, too, because, Mr. Schmidt of Google has already said, if you don't want to be spied on, or why would you be afraid to be spied on if you're not doing anything wrong?
Well, they don't live by that when Julian Assange or whoever releases this information. They get all up in arms, but we're supposed to be okay with them, getting into our underwear. Well, what do you say to somebody who, like, for example, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook has categorically denied his involvement in allowing the government access to the servers at Facebook? So is he just lying there, or does he, maybe he's not even aware that they're able to access whatever he's got on Facebook?
He's lying. His company, Facebook, was started with the help of some CIA money through a company called In-Q-Tel that the CIA set up in order to fund new tech projects, new tech companies with cutting-edge technology, because the intelligence community was lagging behind the private sector, and so they wanted in on everything. And so Facebook had some definite help, personnel, money from that source. So Zuckerberg is completely aware of the connection of Facebook to the intelligence community. But what he's doing and what other CEOs of the big tech companies are doing is they're just parsing their words. They're saying, we are not actively on the phone every day with NSA and, improving the system. They're basically saying we're passive victims, which means we see, hear, and speak no evil. We know it's going on. We know they can tap in. We've either given them direct access or an indirect way of doing it, but then we pretend we didn't, and so we have no active knowledge of what's going on. But they're in on it. There's no question about it. Through whatever the technical means, they want plausible deniability so that they can claim, well, we didn't know they were doing it, we would never agree to that. But they've set up their systems to allow it. So what's the difference?
Right. Well, with this going on, and you knowing about this for a long time and many others, and I've been kind of aware that they flag things as far back as library books before we even had Who's Taking Out Catcher in the Rye, But now that this Snowden, this Ed Snowden, who worked for the NSA, is being called by some a whistleblower and not, would you say that he's a whistleblower when it seems to be all he's saying are things that people like yourself and myself and many others already know? Does that count as whistleblowing? And if so, or if not, why is his life supposedly in danger? Why did he have to flee?
Within a limited context, he is a whistleblower because he exposed this program called Prism, which is the tie-in between the great tech companies and NSA, with free-flowing information all over the place. So in that sense, yes, he is, if you're unaware of what's been going on for the last 15, 20 years. And there are supposedly, according to the reporters that he's talked to at The Guardian and The Washington Post, thousands more documents that have not yet been released. In fact, The Washington Post has already said that some of the slides that he gave them, they are not going to publish because too sensitive, Mm-hmm. So, yes, within that limited context. But questions remain about this guy Snowden. I wrote an article the other day, NSA leaker, are there serious cracks in Ed Snowden's story, about his history, his work history. Because as he related it to these reporters in Hong Kong when they videotaped him, there are just things that don't add up. For example, how does a guy who doesn't have a high school diploma suddenly get a very responsible CIA position, not just simply as a computer whiz, but he's sent to Geneva to oversee the security of the CIA systems or the embassy systems over there. He's under diplomatic cover. He's a covert agent, and he's an executive. All of a sudden, at age, whatever that is, 23, yeah, right? I mean, what's going on there? How does that happen?
I don't know. I had a bong in my lap when I was 23. I certainly didn't have access to any more otherworldly information than that. But
Exactly. So was this guy being groomed somehow? I'm not saying that he's necessarily an active participant in some kind of a major scam here, but that perhaps as an unknowing dupe, certain powers that be brought him along because they spotted him and targeted him as the kind of personality who might eventually be useful to them in exactly the way that he is now. In other words, there's an agenda behind the agenda. So you look at his work history, and there are just glaring paradoxes and questions that are not resolved. He goes to Geneva. He's 23 years old. He's got diplomatic cover. He's an executive there with the CIA. And then, he quits the CIA all of a sudden. Why? And then he goes to NSA as a contractor assigned to NSA. All of that is highly suspect. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't add up. There are, 5 or 10 or 12 of these items in his work history that make absolutely no sense at all. What is the real agenda here?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not really clear on why he would supposedly hide in Hong Kong, which would kind of be like trying to escape Vatican officials by going to a gay Italian disco. But I think that at some point, he checked out of his hotel room, and now we don't know where he is. And then immediately you begin to lose the thread of what's really going on. I mean, if he's not, if he disappears, has he been killed? Is he not killed? If he turns up later, who's in control of him being in? You just completely lose the thread, and then the story becomes that rather than, the uncomfortable nature of having everything that we do monitored by a giant behemoth electronic unit like they're building in Utah.
Exactly.
Let me get your reaction to the Guardian newspaper in Britain has a comment piece by the former head of GCHQ, which I guess is something like CIA. It's like the CIA, I guess, the British spying organization, where he undermines the leak story and he bats away any concern over internet snooping by any Western government security service. I'll throw a couple of quotes at you. He said he's delighted that our transatlantic cooperation with the U.S. extends in this high-tech way into the 21st century with so much information carried on the internet, and says that it would be scandalous if internet companies didn't comply with U.S. law and allow NSA access to require. Of course, this guy was the head of this thing. He says that to describe this process as monitoring all our communications or the surveillance state or a snooper's charter is wholly misleading and a perverse reading of this situation. So we should not fuss too much about these specific revelations. Is this guy out of his mind, or?
Yeah, he's just trying to cover, that's all.
Fox in the henhouse.
He's using a time-honored technique, which is instead of denying, you admit and then you embrace the whole thing, and you go even further with it when he says, of course we would expect and celebrate the fact that these tech companies are cooperating with the intelligence community because that's exactly what we need in order to stop terrorism. Never mind the fact that a lot of these terrorist incidents have been false flags that we ourselves provoked in order to bring on the surveillance state, which doesn't really exist. It just goes on and on and on through various corridors of insanity. But, yes, somebody wanted this exposure. They wanted to torpedo the NSA and make the NSA into a big-time story that would expose what the NSA has been doing to people who don't know, and also force politicians to act in some way that would be possibly detrimental to the NSA. And as I recently wrote in an article, if you understand the real reach of the surveillance state, you know, for example, that the NSA has been able to tap into mountains and mountains of financial data over the years. In other words, they've been able to look over the shoulders of the biggest investment banks in the world to see how they manipulate markets and what they know what insider information they have. And now the NSA has been able to, and other organizations have been able to discover that and make use of it.
So that's like going into the going back a little bit to the LIBOR scandal, where they are setting the rates ahead of time. Now, obviously, who are the fellas sitting around the table setting the rates and benefiting immensely from the slightest little tick up or down one way or the other?
You bet. So if you are the NSA or an organization like that, which could even be a private corporation, and you have access to all of this information that is intrinsic to financial markets or that affects the flow up and down of financial markets before it actually happens, you can pour all sorts of billions of dollars into investments and make trillions and stash it and use it and do who knows what with it. Now you're really looking at the outlines of what the surveillance state means. This is crime on top of crime. And so this could very well have angered deeply players like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, et cetera, who believe that they own these markets. And now suddenly they've got another player that they can't really, destroy, who's looking over their shoulders every minute, every second of every day, and capitalizing on what they know and using it to make more money than even Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs makes. That's a competitor.
Yeah.
That's something, that's like a wild card suddenly entered into the whole thing. Now we're talking about the real story at the real level that it occurs.
I wonder, too, why when so much data is gathered and information assembled, I don't know if there's any kind of official tally on how worthwhile that information has been. I mean, if you go back to 9/11, apparently there were field agents in the FBI gathering all kinds of data. And then during their attempt to bring it to their superiors to say, hey, we got to move on this, it's shooed away. So at what point do you think, there's a worthiness to any of this gained material anyhow, if it doesn't just play into someone's particular hand? Like, it seems to me, if you're giving me all this information about operatives in training schools and doing things we would rather them not be doing in a terrorist sense, if that even exists as a thing, then I'm going to want to analyze that information and not shoo it away. So why pay even more money and spend even more time and effort looking into everybody's lives, if this it doesn't seem to be all that safe? I mean, look what just happened in Boston. We didn't have Ed Snowden wasn't working at the NSA last month in April or whenever it was, the Boston attacks. Why wasn't that stopped? Why aren't they able to? I mean, so eventually, so I'm rambling on here, but when you get to the point where it's like, how much data can you gather is really worth anything other than a financial gain for whoever it is that's gathering the data? It's not guaranteeing any safety that I can see.
Absolutely. Which tells you that the real aim of the surveillance state has nothing to do with stopping terrorism. Really what it has to do with is control of the lives of everybody, because the ultimate aim of the surveillance state is to be able to predict, first to spy on, to assemble quickly and collate and analyze information on any human being anywhere. And the vision of these systems engineers is then to be able to predict what people are going to do and thereby control it and divert it and distract it and redirect it and so forth. This is a giant 100-dimensional chess game that they're playing. And that's what really the vision is. And that's what they're trying to do. It doesn't have anything to do with stopping terrorism. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're reading about in the newspapers. It's a much more sinister and large agenda, and that's what's going on.
John, you do a great job of conveying the perception of the, let's call them the electorate, the viewers, regarding news cycles and the way anchormen and the way different stories are covered. You've been in that world yourself, so you've seen it from the inside. You've observed it with a lot of time. And I want to ask you this question. Now we're going to be looking at people who are focused almost exclusively on Ed Snowden is a good guy, we should let him go. Ed Snowden is a bad guy, he should go to jail. And that's one little subplot that's playing. The other subplot is, Obama, when he campaigned, ridiculed Bush for these kinds of things, said absolutely he was going to get rid of it, and now he changes his mind when he comes in. He's, in fact, enshrining this stuff. It's like when a new governor or a new leader of a state or a new political party comes in, they say, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and the other thing. And then they go, oh, you know what? We can't afford to do that now because we've looked at the books and the last guys, boy, did they ever leave a mess, It's like people never seem to get that is an old ruse, an old canard. And now that Obama is saying, no, this is a good thing. And if you can't trust me, then we've got some problems. It's like, well, I think we have some problems then. But how long do you think that this life cycle of Snowden good, Snowden bad will take up far too much of the time?
Well, a lot of that depends upon whether they capture him or not, and if not, where he ends up. But, I would say we're looking at least at a couple of months here, where this is going to keep on bubbling and percolating, and then there'll be spikes of new information, and then we have the congressional hearings, investigations, blah, 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 all of that. But Snowden is the key to how long the story has life in major media, because he's the, quote, human interest element. And is he going to show up dead? Is he going to get some kind of asylum in Iceland? Or is he going to suddenly show up in Beijing? What's going to happen? I mean, they certainly have the capability of tracking him if they want to. I mean, if they didn't know where he was already when he was sitting in a Hong Kong hotel room giving an interview to The Guardian, they did when that story broke, and the idea that he checked out of his hotel
and slipped
in
away
Hong Kong and, quote, disappeared is completely ridiculous. I mean, they would have already enlarged the population of Hong Kong by several thousand people, all of whom are agents on the ground looking for him, tapping every possible electronic communication. So if they want him, I'm sure they've got him.
I thought you said Asians on the ground
at any time.
I thought you said Asians on the ground there. That's the other thing, because it's not exactly like he blends in with most people that live there. If they were looking for a 5'5" Chinese man, he might have had a better chance at slipping out, conceivably.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of time left. I appreciate you coming on today. Let me ask about Promise Software. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And is there any kind of connection with getting inside and outside of, as far as the government is concerned, computer software already, Promise Software?
Sure. I mean, that was a program that eventually was taken over and stolen from its inventor. It was a program that allowed backdoor access, basically. I mean, without going into a whole song and dance about it, you produce software that can be used by secretive governments and intelligence agencies for top-level classified information, and then you build a backdoor into it, which means that if you have access, you can spy on everything that's, that's relevant, that's being transmitted and used. That's a very old story from the, I'm going to say, middle 1990s. And it's sort of the Model T Ford version of, I'm sure, what the technology has gotten to be now, which is the ability to hack in at many different points in many different ways to all sorts of electronic systems and suck out data. So that's a kind of a metaphor for spying. And ever since computers really have come into existence, whether you're talking about the gigantic clunky ones or what we've got now, the second issue as soon as the first issue came into being, which is, these computers exist and they work and we can use them, was how do we spy on them? Because they're just asking to be spied on. So we've seen these kinds of programs like Promise from the very beginning, and I'm sure much, much earlier, as soon as the gigantic IBM computers went into action. And we're just seeing more and more and more of it. And now what we're looking at here is just multiple ways of getting into these systems and obtaining whatever you want.
Right. And so they conceivably have only built on that and improved on that.
In
the last 15, 20 years.
The AT&T secret spying room that was installed in order to be able to suck out information from the fiber optic cables of AT&T, and that was really where I think the word Prism began, because as James Bamford reported, who wrote the only 3 books on the NSA, the idea was that you were now spying on light transmissions of light through fiber optics, and you had to hack into the cables because you couldn't just pull down information from satellites anymore with dishes, because fiber optics was the latest and greatest thing. So NSA started installing these secret rooms in major companies like AT&T, where they would just literally split all of the data. One half would go to AT&T customers the way it was supposed to. I mean, that's everything. And then another everything would be prismed off, just like a prism, to NSA computers. That's where Prism, the word, really took hold.
Right, so Snowden is just revealing that this is the name of the program or what have you of something that, we've all known has been going on for a long time. He's just putting a name on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers back in the 70s, is calling Snowden a hero and the most significant information leak that he can think of, including his leak of the Pentagon, of the papers back in 71. Would you agree with that?
No, not at all. I think, first of all, Ellsberg's Pentagon Papers were much more startling and shocking at the time than this is now. But Ellsberg, I've talked to him, and what can I say? He wants to build up public opinion against the surveillance state.
Right.
He wants to challenge it. He wants court cases. He wants public opinion. He wants all of that. And so when he looks at something like what Snowden did, he's looking at it from that vector. He's looking at it from what the effect of this can be on public opinion and court cases and congressional hearings and stirring up a good kind of trouble and trying to beat back the surveillance state. So, I have nothing bad to say about his comments. It's just that I'm not looking at it from that point of view.
Okay.
Well, I am looking at it from the point of view of trying to beat back the surveillance state, but I think we have to see what the largest agenda is, and that largest agenda has to do with absolute control of life and citizens and people from the top down.
Well, John, this has been great speaking with you. If you're just joining us now and you missed my interview with Jon Rappoport, just call your local chapter of the NSA and have them roll the previous half hour for you. I hope
we talk slow enough so that they could pick it all up.
Yeah, we're gonna do the best we can with it. Before I let you go, John, and I want to tell everybody about your website, which is nomorefakenews.com. You've had that for quite some time. It's a great website. You can get John's take on all kinds of issues of the day, and also things creative and imaginative as well, which are no less valuable by any means. And John has a couple of, I don't know what to call it, John, like an information dump truck full of wonderful
gigantic
stuff.
Mega collections, 2 of them.
Yeah, he's got the Matrix
One is called
Revealed.
The Matrix Revealed, and the other Exit from the Matrix. And the kind of thing that we've been talking about here for the last half hour, if you were to take that out to the millionth power in terms of how is reality built for us and what can we do about it, from not only a social, political point of view, but psychological, spiritual, and so forth, creative. That's what these collections are all about, and people can read about them right there at nomorefakenews.com.
Okay, well, that's great, John. Thank you very much. We will speak with you again if Snowden does or doesn't turn up. We'll find out.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, John.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website, conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.